Morning, morning, morning. So Maria mentioned that a third of the people coming here for Tech in Asia, Malaysia, are not from Malaysia. So I was very curious whether or not most of the Malaysians are the one who came late standing in the back, or all the rest of you are punctual. I don't know. But hey, raise your hands if you're not from Malaysia. Let's see who's not from Malaysia. Okay, there you go. There you go. Where are you from, sir? Yeah. Russia. Oh my God. Okay, how about you? Where are you from? Yeah, you work at 500, so I know that. So we got folks from everywhere. I'd like all of the Malaysians, put your hands together to welcome our guests. Warm Malaysian welcome. Thank you so much for flying in for this. This is so good. So good. So the keynote today, the opening keynote, is titled Malaysia on the Rise, which is the same title as the conference itself. So a lot of Malaysians, we're not used to such good news all the time. Do you know what I mean? So some of us may be a little bit skeptical with all the good news that's happening that we're reading. And we're saying that, what is the nature of this? What actually is rising? So that's going to be the first thing I want to talk about in this keynote, okay? What actually is rising? Just based on research, kind of double-clicking on the headlines, seeing what's behind it. Now, based on what exactly is rising, how do we ride it? How do us as Malaysians ride it? But also, how does everybody else in Southeast Asia take advantage of this? Lastly, in the third section, I'm going to talk about the most important questions that we need to ask in the near term of what's next, as well as the longer term that reinforces what the outlook might be for Malaysia on the rise. So without further ado, I'm going to start with the research, the recent research of what exactly has been rising. Now, you would think that I'm going to talk about semiconductors, but no, I'm not going to open with that gambit. I'm going to talk about the tourism videos you just watched. So, I was backstage. I asked Maria, I said, is this a trailer of Jurassic Park? What's that sound? Oh, these are tourism videos. Now, clearly, I've not watched them because I was behind, but these videos must have been very good. Because I was really surprised to see that Malaysia beat Thailand last year to be the most visited country in Southeast Asia. So here are the stats. Malaysia had 29 million visitors, foreign visitors to Malaysia, beating Thailand's 28 million. Yes, 2023, but how about this year? So some smart Malaysians doing their research right there. So this year, we've got 9.48 million visitors as of May 2024 versus 7.48 million in the same period last year. Now, if you were a founder of a startup, you'll be bragging, you're like, hey, look at my year-on-year growth of 25%, right? That's exactly what you'd be saying, and you'd probably be walking like that as well. But why is this growing? That's the stuff that I didn't manage to dig out, but to me, I'm just curious about it. I don't know, why are more people coming to Malaysia than Thailand? But back to tech. It's not just tourism coming here to spend money, but big tech companies are spending money here too. $2.2 billion from Microsoft for cloud and AI. You've got NVIDIA, $4.3 billion in new AI development project. You've got Google investing in another $2 billion, building data centers. So big tech is here, and then semiconductor. Some of the news around Intel and Infineon setting up big investments here in Malaysia. It's interesting. It's interesting not just because it's about $7 billion from Infineon, but it's because of what they're building. They've chosen Malaysia to place their world's largest production site for silicon carbide chips. I do not know specifically what it is, so I had to dig some more. It's a semiconductor chip used in electric cars, wind turbines, a lot of advanced engineering. Intel, another $7 billion to create the biggest site for advanced 3D chip packaging. And it's the primary production base in all of Asia. Not China, not Japan, not anywhere else. It's here in Malaysia. So if these big dollar investments, it doesn't just stop here. It's actually a lot of momentum. So much so that the World Economic Forum published an article and a video actually covering why this is such, why this new semiconductor phase of Malaysia is happening. And of course, the Madani government is riding this wave, targeting over 100 billion more investments into this space as well. I'm not going into the details of why, because a lot of global press has been starting to take notice and coming up with their own theories of why this is happening. This specific YouTube creator called Caspian Report, he does pretty good breakdowns of a lot of global politics and economics kind of thing, and I find his YouTube channel quite enlightening. 3 days ago, he launched a video called How Malaysia's Become the Next Global Chip Giant. It's got past half a million views in the past 3 days. It's really good stuff. because he said, hey, it's not just about the big headlines, but also the other projects from China, from Europe, from the US, and other countries that are setting up not just in Penang, but also in JB, also in Sabah and Sarawak as well. So there's more than meets the eye. The trade winds, of course, between China and the US, this need not to be explained too much, but the video covers it in a pretty good way. JP Morgan decides to upgrade Malaysia's rating, citing credit policy reforms. So this interview on CNBC where Rajiv Batra talked about it, it wasn't so much that they upgraded it, but you can see in his face like a genuine surprise, like such surprise that this is happening here. And I don't know, maybe like it turns out the Malaysians aren't the only ones that are surprised with all this good news, right? So he's upgraded, like JP Morgan's upgraded it. But he talked about something else that's also very subtle and interesting. It's about our stock market. It turns out that Malaysia's public equity market he said that as a bright spot in Southeast Asia, with approximately 9% return year to date, which is the highest amongst countries in Southeast Asia. With all this combined, just on Sunday night, the former Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Hsien Loong, was having this dinner. And during this dinner, when I was there, like he was talking about how Malaysia and Singapore relationship has never been this good, and how important the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone and the progress behind it was a sign of that as well. So we see more and more kind of partnerships with Malaysia, but the Malaysian consumers on day-to-day, who may not care very much or maybe too directly working in these industries, they're continuing to spend, which actually cites some consumer optimism. So consumer spending is continuing to grow. All of these things combined, again, creates more surprise for GDP growth. So Bloomberg's article, they grew citing incredible surprise, because Bloomberg surveys a lot of different economists, and so the GDP growth in the second quarter, the recent quarter, was faster than all of the highest surveys and forecasts by Bloomberg. A lot of economists and Bank Negara and such believe that we could end the year with 5% GDP growth, which is great. So what does this all mean to venture capital, right? So some of you founders in the room are like, yeah, that's great, but I still need to raise my Series A. Okay, great, okay, let's talk about that. Kuap's announcement with the $1.27 billion Dana Pemachu during KL20, talking about how Malaysia is like getting a lot of the GLICs to put together over $627 million to back more startups. These things are like based on just inside workings, like these things are in motion. They've announced 10 new VCs to set up offices in Malaysia. A lot of them have come to visit our office and asked us, hey, where should we set up? Which office is good? You know, we've introduced some of them to different co-working providers and such. Like all this is happening. So can I close off this? Oh yeah, and one other thing is that 500 Global, we're like a global organization, and our headquarters are in Palo Alto in Silicon Valley. So over the years, like Malaysia has been like an outpost of sorts for 500, where we've got our team members floating from co-working space to co-working space. But more recently, because of a lot of this good news and a lot of these headwinds, we decided to have more of our talent actually situated here in Malaysia. Today, we have actually 40 people doing data science. In fact, the majority, almost all the data scientists actually come for our firm actually comes here from Malaysia. They are Malaysians. Our legal, our investment research, our HR, a lot of kind of like a lot of our investments as well. 40 people situating here in this Bank Negara building. And we continue to kind of raise more funds, and now we can invest in Malaysian companies up to 50 million ringgit checks as well. So we're making a commitment over here. I'm proud to say that today, Malaysia is the largest office for 500 Global outside of Silicon Valley with 40 people. So more and more of us are interested in making Malaysia like a very big part of our story. I can't invite all of you to visit because the office space isn't that big, but if you take a picture and scan this QR code, you can kind of take a tour, because a local YouTuber decided to kind of take a tour of the space, right? But I hope to see many of you there someday as well. Okay, what does this all mean? So during my research, I was surprised with how many pictures of them just walking around, right? Like, it's so badass, like they're just literally just like walking around, making business, doing deals, right? And it's like not the only picture, right? There's so many. There was in New York, here they are walking around. They've walked from New York to Germany now. Okay, we're gonna walk to Germany, we're gonna do some deals, right? Okay, it's a bit cold, that's okay. Let's walk to a different part of Europe. Okay, we got deals to do. It's so green, it's a sustainable energy source. We don't even need cars. Who needs EV when you can just walk, right? So they're getting all these deals done. And there's proof it's happening, right? These are deals that are real, right? So impressive. There's more. Okay, let's go through all of them. It's got like this great collection of them walking around. But man, this Madani government, I'm pretty impressed. I think a lot of Malaysians have reasons to be skeptical, and a lot of us still are. but I feel like for the business community, things are really happening. It is felt. So, is Malaysia on the rise? All of this combined, tourism, consumer spending, foreign direct investment, big tech, cloud, data, AI, finance, venture capital, I'd say like something's happening. Something is indeed happening. So this brings us to the second section. How do we ride it? If you're a talent working in the tech sector, you're a founder building a company, raising money, you're a VC, you're an asset allocator of the GLICs, government policymaker, how do you take advantage of what's happening? The best news of all is that all of us, we never needed the good news. Founders in Malaysia have been building companies in the worst of news. Maybe Chen Chao's here, I'll just name some real examples. Like Chen Chao were to quit his illustrious management consulting career to join Job Street, to help build up Job Street, and later on found and invest and mentor so many other startups. All this when there's like no good news to be had. VC firms like Ms. Chokubi over there, one of the pioneers of our industry, investing in companies like mine when there was absolutely no news to be had. A lot of you have been helping build the most iconic companies in the region without any good news. So like I said, it's almost kind of like weird. I'm like, oh wow, okay, so good stuff is happening. What do we do? Well, back to business, back to work, I guess. You never needed it. That's the best news. That's who you are. You don't need all of these macro headwinds for you to kind of make your plans and do things which are great. So with that, I want to highlight like probably the most important lesson of this whole presentation. I'd like to illustrate a very subtle hidden link between market outlooks, confidence, as well as plans that are being made. I've observed that for most people, when there's good news in the market, it rises, the confidence rises. It's like, wow, the market's doing so well. Like, I'm so confident about this country, about this thing I'm doing in my business. I'm going to hire more people, I'm going to make more growth, I'm going to spend more on growth. And then they make plans based on the confidence that is derived from the markets. This is not a bad thing. It's not a stupid thing. This is kind of how the world works, right? Then when the news is bad, when the market sucks, you're like, oh man, my confidence is so down. Stuff is not happening for me. I'm gonna play small. I'm just do less. Very few people have a different relationship between market outlooks, plans, and confidence. This, I would say, anecdotally, maybe like 90% of people are letting markets shape and shake their confidence that makes their plans. But I'll say maybe 9% anecdotally would have markets go up and down and then they adjust their plans. They're like, ha, great, the market's turning in this way, this is happening in the news, this in fact affects my industry, I'm gonna do this instead. I'm gonna take advantage of the fact that the market is going in this direction. Most fortunes are made, most tycoons in so many countries, the biggest lifts in their fortunes are made because of the plans they made when the economy was down. So when markets change and shift, what are your plans? And based on the plans that you make, that's where you derive your confidence. Now the last 1%, this is like baller level. Your plans shape and shake the market. And it creates confidence in others. And many countries, industries, business leaders have made moves that fundamentally alter the trajectory of entire markets, right? And I'll talk a bit some of that towards the end. But I just want to illustrate this observation to you so you can kind of look at your friends, I guess, and look at your colleagues, look at your bosses, your founders, and see what relationship do they have between confidence, plans, and markets. So dear Malaysian founders, I'm just gonna pull this back for my second section to conclude my second section. Is that I'm gonna drive this home, this part home like really hard because it's so important. So many of you, and pardon like Ken and Yin Yin, I stole your photo off Google from someone's wedding photography portfolio. Okay, Ken CY Photography. I'm so sorry I'm using you guys. I hope you guys appreciate it. So it doesn't matter what news that you're reading in the kopitiam, but you've been doing stuff and building companies which are amazing. I mentioned how like Chen Chao, like working with Mark Chang and others to build up Job Street. I talked about how so many of you have built up Grab, from Khailee Ng, from SMK, Damansara Utama, all the way to Sultan Thomas, which you'll hear more from him later in Tech in Asia, who went to MMU and was debating, like coaching other debaters. All the way from Lucas Ngu, who's the founder and CTO of Carousel, who grew up in Ipoh, right? Who's now spending a little bit more time on some new projects. All the way to Eric Cheng and a lot of his colleagues, right? Eric Cheng from SMK Damansara Jaya, the high school that I came from. It's all the way to Wai Hong from StoreHub. You know, they're out there in Mutiara Damansara, and people don't know this, but StoreHub is the largest POS system for restaurants in all of Southeast Asia, and they didn't raise nearly as much money as a lot of the rest of them who aren't even around anymore. Like, they've got 17,000 restaurants using the POS systems across the region, multiple markets. So a lot of regional champions are built in the worst of times and without any good news. And how can I not mention Aero9? Like, people ask about IP, you know, and real engineering, real R&D. You know, it's sitting there here really in Cyberjaya. So all these Malaysian champions, it's not just the founders, it's all of you who had the confidence and made a plan to work in these companies, investors who had the confidence and made a plan to invest in these companies. All of you built this without any good news. So much so that when during Cento's report, there's a very good slice of data, I really respect that. They took all the investments that's gone into an ecosystem in a country and also calculated all the exits that came out. It turns out that Malaysia has a 1.21x exit to investment ratio, outperforming everybody else by 3.5 times, because the next best is 0.34x. So as far as ecosystems are concerned, like, Malaysia has delivered. Malaysia's delivering on people who work hard and build big things. Now, for the Malaysian talent, you are everywhere. I've traveled so far and wide, and I keep bumping into Malaysians who can detect my accent. You're Malaysian, right? It's not even like you're Malaysian or Singaporean, right? It's just like, straight, you're Malaysian, you know? You've been building other people's countries. You know, there's a 1.1 million of you are actually in Singapore. Singapore's a great nation that's kind of like built by a lot of Malaysians. It's a real stat, guys. You can Google it. You know what I mean? Stuff's real. It's not just Singapore. Like I mentioned, like, you're everywhere, right? You're everywhere. Like, our activity in Middle East, in Silicon Valley, you're everywhere. Like, you don't need the good news to feel good. You've always been executing and delivering. You can build anything because you have built anything. You have done all of this. That's my key message for you. And to drive this home one more time with a little bit of a quiz. Okay, Quibi, you cannot answer. You're not allowed to answer because I know you know the answer. Who is the gentleman here? Anyone know who this is? Can shout out name? Okay, Quibi cannot answer, but anyone can guess who this is? Okay, no takers. How about this gentleman? What? Okay, Hock Tan. Yeah, I know, they covered him extensively, but let me tell you about this gentleman first, okay? This gentleman, to me, is a bit of a hero because he's like the godfather of godfathers for venture capital across Asia. He's probably known as a CEO of Cadence for quite many years. I think it's about 20 years. It's like a $78 billion company. I just Googled the market cap. Cadence is involved in semiconductor chip design. It's like a huge company that kind of like designs a lot of what we see here that powers a lot of our compute. But he also founded Walden International. And I was like, you know, at age 37, he was already managing $2 billion, okay, in the year 2000. He was managing $2 billion at age 37, raised to invest in China Semiconductor, to raise to invest in companies like JobStreet, to raise to invest companies across Southeast Asia. This is like the OG of like VCs. And it is him who actually trained and got along Ms. Chok Quibi to be a pioneering VC here, and Quibi then invested in me and so on and so forth. So this is like the genealogy of Asian venture history. This guy's a baller. So today he's on Intel's board, he's on SoftBank's board, he's on Hewlett-Packard's board, and many more. His name is Lee Poo Tan. He's from Muar. Okay, for those of you who know Hock Tan, here on the right, there's no .com without Broadcom. Broadcom is the networking, the infra that powers so much of compute, and he continues to be the CEO of Broadcom in the US. He's on the board of Meta. He was in the news because he was paid more than Elon Musk and Tim Cook. His CEO salary was apparently like $160 million last year. This is from Penang. There are many more Malaysians hidden in plain sight. You would think that Silicon Valley are run by Indian professionals. That is absolutely true, but there are a lot of Malaysians there as well. Okay, so I've made my point. I really, really hope I've made my point to you that you do not need this good news. You are much more than that. So let's take that learning and let's battle something that's also very real, a challenge that's also very real. Okay, I'm calling it the VC market drag. I think that there's like some ups and downs and very interesting things that are happening, but there's also a drag in the market where maybe a lot of venture capitalists are not investing at the pace and the speed and the size they used to. Okay, I think that's real even for us. And founders as well, they've started to be a bit less bold with some of their visions and their plans. Right? There is a lot of hunger for profitability, but the plans are getting smaller and less exciting as well. So how do we reconcile this VC market drag? All this happening with a ton of global volatility. Yes, Malaysia is good news, but hey, everywhere else doesn't have very good news, okay? Like things are getting a bit like crazy in some places. All this resulting in a rampant, widespread pandemic of a loss of confidence. Now like I mentioned, maybe Malaysians were immune to it because we have our own confidence, but outside there's a ton of loss of confidence. So how do we battle this with our confidence? This is the game of confidence. It's this where confidence should rise. So for my last point on my second section before I close this off, is that we're gonna need a way to imbue this confidence and let it spread, because confidence breeds confidence. And without this kind of confidence and a substantial source of confidence, you won't have the conviction to build companies or invest in companies. So how do we actually get this confidence? I'm going to tell you a story, a very true story that just happened 2 months ago. And I'm going to show you a model, right, of a few sources, very sustainable, powerful sources of confidence. So first, I'm going to tell you a story about confidence. I was, actually it's not 2 months, it's actually 1 month ago. I was asked to join a due diligence call because a foreign VC wanted to invest in a Malaysian company. The foreign VC, who I'm gonna like anonymize and call her Jen wanted to know whether the founder, like how good the founder was compared to other founders, right? So it's due diligence calls, very standard for VCs like us. So I jump on this call, and I'm glad I'm taking this call because I love this founder. This founder's like really extreme in terms of things that he's overcome. So I answered Jen. I said, Jen, I need to tell you about my interactions with this founder because it's kind of very interesting. The first thing about this founder, it's never happened in this way before. I'm walking down in Bangsar, in Talawi, some of the inner Talawi streets, and then I hear some kind of running up from behind. And I thought I'm gonna get robbed. This is like shit. I'm like, this is not good. This is gonna be bad. I turn around, this guy much larger than me, and he puts his hand on my shoulder. Like, holy crap, like this is the end. It starts to pitch me a startup. He's like, Khailee, I just registered my company a month ago, right? And this is what I plan to build. So at that point, I'm still in a state of shock, right? So I just listened to the whole thing, right? And then we walk, I shake off the jitters, okay, we walk. By the end of that walk, I was honest with him and said, hey, look, I'm actually convinced. I think this is good. And I am still raising my second fund, so I can't cut you a check right now. But you just hold on to me. I'm gonna get the first close, I'm gonna back you the moment the first close of my second fund is there. And I did. So his ability to kind of accost me in public, which I do not recommend anyone to do, I really hope this is not the takeaway here, right? He was very compelling. But the thing he did next was crazy. After he raised his seed round, he would not be able to raise for another 6 years. He had the seed round, and it was not enough to instill confidence in others. The business model was in the business of selling motorcycles. By the time, the whole market was focused on cars. So big kudos to Carson, right, for taking the energy away from the motorcycle business. But man, this guy, he kept his core team together for 6 years, bootstrapping on such a small seed round. And then he calls me up, and I was just chatting to him last night about this to exchange, verify these details. He called me, and it was actually on my birthday that year, and he was telling me, he said, Khailee, I want to pivot my business. All I need is 50K to demonstrate this. All I need is 50K. And I said, man, you've managed to survive for 6 years and hold the whole company together. 50K is fine. Let's do it. With the pivot, he started a new business that started to take off. And he started to trade used motorcycles. So with the used motorcycles that he was buying and selling, he was starting to amass a lot of these motorcycles. But being a bootstrap founder at the time with only 50K, he didn't have a warehouse for the motorcycles. So he parked all the bikes in his office car park. Okay? So you're in Bangsar South, you have this small little office over there, and you got 120 motorcycles you pay every day just for motorcycles to be in the car park. Again, not a strategy I recommend anyone to do. It's freaking motorcycles are there. So of course the building management was like, hey, I know you're paying parking for all of this, but you can't have 120 of them here. They called the cops on him. Cops arrive in his office, say, hey, look, you gotta get all your motorcycles out, get it all out. He calls me up, hey, Khailee, do you have a place that I can park my motorcycles? I said, how many motorcycles do you have? About 120. Yeah, I don't think so, right? And we hustle, we make phone calls, we try to make it work. 60 minutes later, he convinces a real estate agent to allow, before signing any contracts or whatever, to get all the motorcycles shipped, drove to a different state in Malaysia, so he'll avoid the police that was giving him asking him to take the bikes away. So he and his staff members, all the early founding team members, rode motorcycles that day, all the way to 1 a.m. All the way, that's riding motorcycles all the way to a different state, parking it, and this real estate agent who believed in him, and all the motorcycles were there. The cops came back the next day. Where are the bikes? I don't know. Where are the bikes? They're gone. It's not your problem anymore. It's in a different state. It's out of here. After sharing those 3 stories, and I'm not saying this is correlated, but that foreign VC issued a term sheet within 5 days. Confidence is missing in times like this, but confidence is the superpower of entrepreneurs. And it is this confidence that is going to be viral. So I don't know, Gil, if you're here, but I give a big round of applause to Gil, for inspiring all of us. He's gone on to raise a Series A. He's going to have a great Series B, and and all of your team members, it's just great. Go visit their showroom in Shah Alam. Just fantastic motorcycles, and a great story from a founder. Okay, I've got a few minutes left for the last section, so I'm going to get into it. I've already made the case over there that the one thing you can do in a market like this is to remember the confidence you had even when markets were down, and to use that confidence to make your staff believe, to make your team believe, to make all of your investors believe. And there's 3 sources to generate this confidence even when you have none. The first is the sheer will of the believer. You have to will yourself to be confident again. And a lot of founders in the room, I know you do this every morning, so it's something that you gotta do. But you need a bit more than that. Sometimes when your chips are down, you kind of forget of all the things you've achieved when you were actually, things were working. So the past evidence of your own successes in your life, even down to primary school, when you're a child in kindergarten, all these things, all this kind of compounding confidence evidence is a source that you can take, or any kind of traction that you have. Now the third one is herd mentality and social proof, because everybody else believes in it. No, that was a trick. I don't believe that herd mentality and social proof, all because someone believes in something, that means you should believe in it too. I think that's very dangerous, especially dangerous for VCs. So I said I don't think that's the best source of confidence, but I'll give you one that really is. And this one's hard, because it takes freaking time. It takes time to do the research, to do customer interviews, lost art for a lot of founders. They're not even doing customer interviews. Do customer interviews, get the stats, build up your own logic, and then make your plans. So these sources of confidence, I think, would help amplify what you want to do over here. So this brings to the last section, as I want to respect the time that I've been given for this opening keynote. We have covered so far what's rising in Malaysia. I've talked about how you ride it by using these levers of confidence to create more momentum. And now, in the final section, I want to talk about 2 key questions. One for the near term, a question on everyone's mind, and the second one, a question for a long term, which is also kind of a very pressing one. The first question, for the near term. We know that local and foreign VCs are here, many of you in this room, and you're keen to deploy in Malaysia. But the question is the local opportunity set deep enough? Some Malaysians will think, some policymakers will think, is that too much money chasing 2 free deals? You have these kind of memes, right? But all because they kind of rhyme, doesn't mean it's true. We need to know. So the source of confidence we want to test here is about data and research. So I'll show you a bit of research we've done, right? So with our growth stage mandate, investing up to 50 million ringgit checks in the companies, I spoke to the team and said, look, let's get all the logs of all of our founder interactions of our growth stage companies, and let's start slicing the data. So we met 198 companies in 18 months. And we took the 198 companies and we categorized them into A1 grouping and A2. A1 is that they've got more than 5 million in revenues, they've more than 20% in growth, and they're profitable. A2 is they got 2 out of 3 of that criteria, right? So these are good companies. So the total pool of companies in A1 and A2 that we would have the first pass filter amounts to 3 billion ringgit of investment potential. That's 3 billion ringgit that these founders want to raise for their companies. And that's like a total amount of 81 out of this 198 companies. If you want to have different strategies, of course, you can target the rest of it. It's close to 5 billion of investment potential. But we needed to go a little bit more. We need to be more selective than this to make the point. So we studied exits, because exits is so important, right? So we said, okay, what are the sectors that did well on Bursa? We cross-analyzed the Bursa IPOs, all the Bursa IPOs since 2021. And we found that several sectors that had more than 3 IPOs and more than 20% post-IPO returns in a 6-month basis after they went public. Okay, what are these sectors? What are the sectors to avoid because they didn't do well? We took some of these top sectors and we overlaid the data. We said, okay, looks like we can narrow down our A1 and A2 companies to actually represent 38 opportunities that represent 1.2 billion ringgit of immediate deployment today, right? That's 260 million US dollars. They may not be much, but this is just one VC talking to a whole bunch of companies and doing the research right here, right? There may be other VCs looking at other companies too. But we did more. We put it across this chart. We plotted all of the top filtered companies across categories of like up to 10 million, 0 to 5 million US dollars, up to 10 million US dollars, and more than 10 million US dollars, and also the growth rates from 0% to 60%. The green is the number of companies in that category that's profitable, 12 is not profitable. And we were surprised, it's so cool to see, to our surprise, that on the upper right corner, which is the hardest category, to have revenues more than 10 million US dollars and growth of more than 60%, and to be profitable, that's almost half of the companies we looked at. That's 11 real companies right there. And the rest of this, they're all pretty strong companies too. So again, why are we confident? Why, as like global investors here in Southeast Asia, with a subset of strategies here in Malaysia, why is 500 Global interested? Because we did the research and we say, hey, look, we are going to deploy. It doesn't matter what the news is. These are companies that we can back. Okay, now for the next question, right? So I've answered the first question. Is it deep enough? I hope I've shown you some research to help you formulate your own opinion. Now the second, and this is a final question before I wrap up. Semiconductor, AI, data centers, cloud. A lot of the investments that are here, they're not for like the invention of AI. They're not for the design of the semiconductors. They're involved in packaging, assembling, testing. So some critical voices may say that, hey, look, this is some low-income jobs that are just being farmed off to Malaysians to do, right? Some may be critical in that way. That's not true at all, but that could be a case to be made there. And the question is like, is it high value enough? How is this actually going to change and upgrade our society in a high-income, a very advanced nation? How is this going to help? It's a proper question, right? What does all this mean for the long term? I'm going to quote René Girard. He's a philosopher. The late René Girard passed away a few years ago. His thinking was known to influence Peter Thiel, which is shaking his hand right there, who's the founder of Clarion Capital, PayPal, first investor in Facebook, and he's the founder of Founders Fund as well. So this philosopher, René Girard, was very controversial when he attacked Silicon Valley innovation centricity. He attacked the whole idea that innovation was so supreme and important, this invention and this uniqueness. He attacked that really hard. He said the principle of originality at all costs lead to a paralysis. The more we celebrate these creative and enriching innovations, the fewer of them you actually get. Instead, what he proposes, to quote René Girard, is that imitation is important. It began in Germany, which in the 19th century was thought to be, at most, capable of imitating the English. And it was then that it actually surpassed them. And we all respect a lot of German technology today. And then it continued with the Americans, whom for a very long time, the Europeans saw as very mediocre gadget makers who weren't theoretical or cerebral enough to take on any world leadership role. We've all seen what happened there. And it happened once more with the Japanese. If after World War II, to quote René Girard, was seen as imitators of Western superiority. But look at Japan now. And again, we're seeing it, it seems, with Korea. So this was written 15 years ago, by the way. So with Korea, and also perhaps one day it'll be the Chinese. But because this was written 15 years ago, René Girard was right. With Korea, they sell more EV cars than any maker in the US. They're EV car leaders in the US on smartphones and so on and so forth. China, nothing needs to be said there. Once upon a time, all of these nations were accused of being just low-value imitators. But imitation and learning best practices, learning the fundamental skills, is a stepping stone that you cannot skip on your way up. So if you're even more interested, you can kind of check out the book. But the last part of the quote is, all of these consecutive mistakes about the creative potential of imitation cannot be due to chance. So where does that answer for Malaysia? No one expected low-value imitators to become high-value dominators of industry. Nobody expects this. This stealth advantage is exactly what we have. Malaysia has always been much more than that. We are not just imitators. You've seen the talent, the types of companies, the kind of ingenuity, the kind of innovation that continues, the kind of companies that we've backed. They continue to demonstrate that we are already much more than that. In the sea of Malaysians and skeptics who will kind of kutuk yourself kind of thing and have some naysaying, right? You gotta put that aside and remember who you actually are. So with that, Tech in Asia, with that, Malaysia, keep up your confidence. Rain or shine, good news, bad news, keep up your confidence. Confidence in your plans. And keep executing. Because decades later, you're going to remember this moment as the inflection point. Thank you very much.